The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Dwayne Mullins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Thursday, September 12th, 2019. I'm Kevin Laramie, joined by Dwayne Mullins. How you doing, Dwayne?
I'm doing well. I'm confused. I have all these spreadsheets in front of me. On one half, I've got this spreadsheet that's trying to do all of the MLS playoff calculations, and then I'm trying to figure out the FIFA rankings, and the other one is too much math.
Hashtag math and I. Speaking of math, we made a mistake yesterday. We called, I called Sacramento Team 28. No, it's Team 29. I missed a team here and there. I guess math and I are not friends.
We also said it was smaller than it was. Got told off for that. It is in the 20s in terms of its media market size, but my point remains: it is not a sexy media market to Major League Soccer because it is not in an area that they desire, an area that they feel that fills a gap for them. That's really how they think. That's why Cincinnati, even though it also is not on the sexy side of the markets, did fill a gap in terms of the Midwest for them, and Sacramento, of course, California. Already has quite a bit of folks there, and they are at San Jose, which they feel is your northern California team. So yeah, but we talked about that yesterday. Go back in the archives, ignore the
28
remarks, and just focus on the core.
Ignore the 28. Everything else is still valid. A few games in Major League Soccer last night, 4 to be precise. I did watch a few of them because that's what we do. I did watch NYCFC and I did watch Colorado, LA Galaxy. Well, we'll talk about the LA Galaxy a little later on because of Zlatan's reaction. And of course, we've seen the video of the two, they're not streakers because they were dressed, but the two random idiot that ran into the pitch with Zlatan. But you have the video in slow motion of Zlatan just walking, cool like nothing's happening, people falling, running all around him. He doesn't care. That video is quite entertaining. But no, we'll talk about Zlatan's temper later on for sure. But let's just look quickly at the games last night. Dwayne, TFC did play, and it did have some Eastern Conference playoff implication in that game. NYCFC won, Toronto FC won after this game. Toronto is now 4th in the Eastern Conference with 42 points. That's equal on points on DC United 5th, 1 point ahead of the Red Bulls in 6th, and 3 points ahead of the New England Revolution, now in 7th position. And with that 1 point, NYCFC now has a 3-point lead on top of the Eastern Conference line.
Yeah, exactly. From the TFC perspective, you mentioned it, puts them above the, what are we calling it? The dotted red line, I guess, the home playoff date red line.
Yeah.
For the first time since April. And it's been a long scratch crawl to get back to that. Now it's precarious, as you mentioned, those standings, but certainly, as you know, points in the board, points in the pocket, and all that sort of stuff, they have managed to scrape it up, so they do have an equal chance of all of those teams to gather that. And overall, TFC's form, although you can nitpick at it, you could say that they should have hit the penalty at the end, and absolutely they should have. Not only because I would have won $75, but that's part of it.
Okay, that's why you're feeling like this, but moving on.
Yeah, exactly. There was that, but it was a free bet. I got a promotion from Bet365, so I threw it all in that. But anyway, moving on. Forget about me and my gambling addictions. It was an opportunity to really pull ahead on that playoff situation. Although you didn't mention Montreal in that rundown, they go 4 points up. Is it 4 points on the Impact or more? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, Kevin. But it does.
Right now the Impact have 37. Toronto has 42. 5 points clear of the Montreal Impact for Toronto FC. Montreal is now 2 points behind New England for the last spot that gives a playoff game, and Montreal has 1 game less to play than New England as well. So not good.
Yeah, and the magic number for Toronto to clinch a playoff spot is 8 now. So any combination of 8 points dropped by Montreal or a gain by Toronto will guarantee TFC a playoff spot. I think.
So basically,
I'm ready to.
When you say 8, sorry, Dwayne, I just want to clear it for our listeners. When you say 8 point example, Toronto gets 2 wins, Montreal loses a game.
It's done.
It's done because that's 9. Or Montreal just get a 1 point. Montreal needs to win 4 games. Montreal just get 1 point. Toronto gets 2 wins. Montreal could be eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah, from catching Toronto anyway. But it's obviously more complicated because there's more teams in the mix. But that is the
well,
the
just between Toronto and Montreal, right? The other teams are not in that conversation. New England and Montreal will probably battle it out for the 7th spot. I think this is starting to be clear now.
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't, as a Toronto FC observer, and I don't even think, I'm not even really hearing it within the more sky is falling side of the fandom, isn't really talking about 7th anymore. It's more about, can they get a home date? And I think that is, it's kind of, well, if you go way back in our archives and listen to our preseason, that's pretty much where I thought they'd be. And I was generous back then compared to most, but I said 4 or 5 in that area, and that's exactly where they look like they're going to be. So there you go.
Well, and we always said Montreal was going to be a playoff bubble team, fighting for a playoff spot. And the beginning of the season they had on the road especially did change a bit of the expectations this team had this year. But if you look at Montreal now, 8, 2 points behind New England in 7th, that's where we kind of figured they would be too. And the teams behind them, it's exactly who we thought they were going to be as well. It's kind of funny how the standings in the Eastern Conference goes to from the ebb and flow. You know that famous video on Twitter where you see logos of the teams like on a race and go up and down regarding where they are in the standings?
Yeah.
This changes a lot, right, in the Eastern Conference. And at the beginning of the season, wow, Red Bulls, NYCFC are in the bottom of the East. What's happening? At the end of the day, the cream rises to the top. And we pretty much, outside of Philly in 2nd spot, the rest is pretty much how we thought the East was going to look like at this point.
Yeah, the cream rises and the dirt settles, yeah.
Sorry, FC Cincinnati, you're dirt.
Yeah, it was a big, honestly, was it 2 points lost or 1 point game for Toronto last night? That's a difficult question for me to answer. I do think in the nature of how they played towards the end of that game where they were the better team in the last 20 minutes or so, and they did, get the penalty call, the VAR call that went for them for once. They did fail to take advantage of that. So it kind of feels like 2 points lost, but in reality, had you asked most fans going into that game, I think they would have taken the 1 point against a very tough NYCFC team on the road and then set up to try and play a suddenly very hot Colorado Rapids on Sunday. Look, when it comes to the penalty miss, it's an unfortunate situation, but their overall penalty record this year has not been that bad. You're going to miss 1 in 5 pretty much statistically. So as much as some people want to scream and rant and rave about that, it's kind of just part of the statistical mix there.
Pozuelo got hit 4 before that. So, I would just go with that. He hit the 4 before that. It was 4 and 4 before that saved one later in the game. And, there was a kind of foreshadowing during that game for that too, because Terry Dunfield was like, oh, he's so prepared for his penalties. It's a mental challenge between Pozuelo and the keepers. He sent them the other way. He did 2 to the right, 1 to the middle. He went to the left on that one. Well, eventually the keeper saved the 5th one, which is kind of normal. 1 out of 5 is saved by a keeper in penalties around the world in football. It's kind of worth it. But Toronto won. And NYCFC won. I guess it does bring value to both those teams. In the standings, the 1 point is actually worth a lot more than a 1 point. A lot of times you'll be disappointed, but this is a 1 point at a place that it's not easy to play. We're not going to talk about the phone booth that is Yankee Stadium, but it's so hard to play there. When you're just looking at you have Benezet and Endo trying to hug the line and just one false step and you're out of bounds. But Toronto got the result. Let's look at the other results in Major League Soccer yesterday, Dwayne. Houston 2, Minnesota 0. It's never easy to play at Houston, but the Dynamo won against Minnesota. Colorado LA Galaxy is a game that I want to talk about, so we'll come back to it. Real Salt Lake 1, San Jose 0. San Jose still in the conversation for one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but they're now 5th. They're dropped a few results over the last couple of weeks, but still in playoff contention. I want to come back to Colorado 2, LA Galaxy 1, undefeated, unbeaten under Robin Fraser. Colorado 2, LA Galaxy 1. Red card late in that game. Well, yellow. It was rescinded or changed by VAR for Pavon. But we did have in this Colorado LXC game a tough game, I think, for Chris Penso. It was a tough game as well, with Zlatan's antics once again, yelling at players, mouthing at referees. Why doesn't he get his yellow for mouthing to the referee, Dwayne? He's saying way more, in Canada, we have a sport called hockey, played with little thing that's black. It's called a puck. There's an English word that sounds similar to puck, but with a different letter. And Zlatan keeps saying that word to referees, but no card for Zlatan.
Yeah. Are you actually asking why he's not getting cards, or is this a rhetorical question? Because I think we all know the answer.
It's rhetorical.
Look, there's a deeper question to be had with Zlatan of whether or not the act is wearing out, whether or not this was a positive signing on the whole for the league. And I think that if you were to get inside the brains of both MLS executives and LA Galaxy executives, I think they'd all be happy to see the backside of Zlatan at the end of the season. And I think we all kind of expect that we probably will. The LA Galaxy, as we've said many, many times, is the epitome of an MLS 2.0 team. They were the best at that. They were the team of the 2.0 era, for lack of a better way, is defined by having a bunch of slugs and 3 good guys.
No offense to Alan Gordon and company, but yeah.
Yeah, and getting the most out of those lesser players to complement your stars, and they did very well at that, but they have failed to adjust to the TAM era, or the MLS 3.0 era, if you prefer, where you have to have more pieces around that and have better, smarter signings. And the Galaxy, to me, still too often lean back on they present the sunshine and the beach to the big names, and that allows them to be somewhat competitive, or does it? I mean, right now, they are an 8th in the West. Now, they could be 2nd in the West with 2 wins, but they are an 8th right now below that red line. We all know how they crashed out last year on the last day. All they had to do was beat a bad Houston team. They could not. And they failed to, after getting a 2-0 lead in the game there in the first half as well. At least we forget.
I remember the Houston coming back in that game. We were all surprised. But no, you're right, Dwayne. And I feel for the LA Galaxy, when you look at the payroll, it's easy. But when you look at the roster, there should be better. They have one of the best young players this league has ever seen in Christian Pavon. But the way he's surrounded, the way he looks at Zlatan, and Zlatan with his attitude, we're not going to the behavior of players on the LA Galaxy is not acceptable for me. If I was a coach, there would be a lot of garbage being thrown in that room, because there is some point that your little egotistical temper tantrums are ruining the chemistry of this team, and the fact that you don't defend, you don't track back, and you expect to be the leader of this team because you think you are, but the leader is not a positive one. And we're seeing all those little things that I despise about selfishness in sports happen with the LA Galaxy. And it's a lost year. I think they took the money, and Chris Klein signed a bunch of players, took tens of millions of dollars, rolled it up real tight, and just threw that in the garbage. Because what's the point of bringing Pavon this year if you're gonna end the season this way?
No, for sure. And look, the way the Galaxy are built, as I said, is outdated. And if you look at their crosstown rivals now in LAFC, that is the new way to build a team. You do have star power in that team, absolutely, but you also have a lot of great TAM power on that team, a lot of great value in that team. I think of players like MAK in terms of the value and getting the most out of it. MAK now maybe arguably, as Rudy said the other day on our roundtable with the Canadian national team, might be the 3rd or 4th at worst most important player on LAFC. The Galaxy are not built that way. The Galaxy never built that way, and they should be able to build that way. They are sitting on a gold mine of talent in that region. They need to tap into it. They need to take a step back and reevaluate, because this clearly isn't working. And you can argue, to get it this global is the idea, and we're hearing stories of Messi in Miami now too.
Yeah, it started today. Yeah. Well, it started a few days ago, but Beckham's apparently in Barcelona today. So.
Yeah, and look, I fully anticipate that's how Miami is going to try and build this team, because that's what David Beckham knows. But is it the right answer? Is Messi going to show up here and have like Lionel Messi, if he wants to play in MLS, could score 50 goals? We all understand this, but will he want to play?
50 goals you're talking about in week 1, right? Just in week 1? I'm just kidding. No, but
they're probably also talking about him coming in 5 or 6 years when he's like almost 40 too,
exactly.
Right? Like
that's the point.
Yeah. Well, the point is marketing, and that has value in this league. We understand this, but it is not how to build a championship team. It's why I don't really fear Miami coming into the East and taking things in a different direction, because I just don't think they're going to build it. The other thing about the Galaxy too, quickly, the last on this, part of the reason I think they've held on to this philosophy of building so long is because they got really lucky on those DPs that they did bring in for a while. David Beckham struggled in the first couple of years, but he actually adjusted. And I'll say this about David Beckham. He always did find a way in the end. He was never... Yeah. He was always had a little more desire than talent in some ways, right? He obviously had the good looks and the branding and all that sort of jazz, but he did back it off with true effort on the field. And more to the point, though, they had Robbie Keane, perhaps the best DP signing of all time in Major League Soccer, who busted his ass, who's still busting his ass on the weekend playing in Vincent Kompany's damn testimonial. So it's like, yeah.
I saw him run back and backtrack and slide tackle. I was like, yeah, that's my kind of player. I've always liked Robbie Keane, especially all the amount of time I've seen Robbie Keane in Major League Soccer. Like the second, third effort. That's where you get the goals in Major League Soccer. Just ask Chris Wondolowski. His second and third effort. And Robbie Keane was the epitome of that. No, but you're right. So we'll see where Zlatan, his legacy falls, and we'll see if he's remembered fondly in Major League Soccer. He's been really prolific, goal-scoring-wise.
He wants to be, yeah, absolutely. Immensely talented. Immensely talented,
but look at his performance of his team versus the other two players that had a similar goal scoring 2 seasons. So there's 3 players that are what we could say similar in the amount of games played and the amount of goals scored right now in Major League Soccer. Carlos Vela, LAFC, Zlatan Ibrahimovic with LA Galaxy, and Josef Martinez with Atlanta United. Atlanta won, of course, last year. And LAFC had a great deep run and a lot of expectations, and they're going to win the Supporters' Shield this year. And with Vela, what is the LA Galaxy keeping from that performance of Zlatan? They don't even have a good chance of a trophy. It's going to be difficult for them to, of course, 2 wins that you mentioned, and they can be higher up in the Western Conference, but that's mixed with other results in the conference as well, and other teams will win. So for me, if you just look at those 3 players and how the teams that they represent use those goals, use the goal-scoring prowess of the 3 players to establish results and success in the league. Atlanta did. LAFC is doing it. LA Galaxy are going to waste 50 goals by Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, another player I could mention is Javenko, and he won the treble in the championship that had that same level of production. The key, again, when you look at those players, you look at how they utilize them. They all kind of played with a bit of a chip on their shoulder too, right? Those stars. Zlatan doesn't. He's coming in completely as a branding exercise. It's completely as an opportunity for him to enhance and bring his brand to a different market. So I don't mean to be critical of his talent. He's clearly played at very, very high levels, and he wasn't completely wrong when he talked about Villa and whether or not he was playing at the same level, whether he was as talented. He was correct in that. He was better when he was younger than anyone in Major League Soccer ever, but that's why he was not there, right? So
when you say wasting it, when you say it like he does, though, you just sound like a dick. I'm sorry for my language, but when I look at Zlatan, that's what I think. Like, man, that guy's a dick.
Well, yeah, he's an ego. He calls himself. He talks in the third person, right? Like Zlatan says this: "You are Zlatan. Don't talk like that, you douche." That's what it comes down to. That's what he comes off as, me, dick, douche. Pick your pejorative term. That's what he comes off as. Yeah. And I'm sure in the room he's coming off that as well. He doesn't seem like the guy that's going to throw down the credit card and take everyone out for dinner.
No, he's going to ask for the rookies to pay for him. And he's going to order the most expensive thing off the menu. He's the bully. He's a bully. That's what Zlatan represents to me. And you know what? I don't like bullies, so I guess that explains it. Before we move on, Dwayne, let's just quickly, we mentioned the standings. Let's just take a look. LAFC got 5 games left. They played 29 games so far, and they have 63 points. They literally have 17 points ahead of Real Salt
They
Lake.
clinched the West last night.
They clinched the West, so they already have a golden ticket for the CONCACAF Champions League for LAFC. But I think we can safely say this. Congratulations to LAFC on winning the 2019 Supporters Shield.
Oh, yeah. It's a matter of, I don't know what the actual magic number is, but it can't be very much at this point. They have won the Shield. The question is whether they want to truly focus on shattering the all-time points record. You mentioned 5 games, 15 points at 63. They could get up to 78 points. That would be, I can't ever see that getting passed, right? Unless they add games to the schedule, which they might.
But there's going to be more teams, so that could happen.
Yeah, but in terms of a 34-game schedule, I can't see anyone getting close to 78 points in this league, which is what they'd be on pace for. I suspect that they will rest some of their guys down the stretch to try and prepare for that bye week and heading into to hosting that second round game, which will be against, you would assume, a decent opponent. And this is the one question I do have about this playoff format. There's a lot of questions. The closer we get to it, the more interesting it's going to be to play out. Like, is it actually going to be an advantage? Obviously, it's an advantage in that you don't have to worry about a round. But are those teams, because they're going to have something like 10 days off, going to be kind of rusty when they go in to play a team that is battle tested, that played just a week earlier, or whether the travel will kill them? It's going to be a lot of interesting questions.
Well, I think the 1 game versus 2 might give the home team a little bit more of an advantage, right? When you play a home and away series and the other team's having a bye, you're playing a 2-game emotional high and lows, the travel, the setup. You're ready for the next game. Just the 1 game, maybe it will dilute that advantage a bit, but you're right. It's never easy to just wait for your opponent. When your opponent's playing, the timing, everything's sharp, it's clean, the tactics, it's fresh, the mentality, and you're going to the other game with confidence that you built in the game prior. So it is true, and over the years, we've seen, especially, that's why they changed the rules, because the away team almost had an advantage coming into the first leg at home, getting a result, and then keeping that result for the second leg. We've seen it happen around 58% of the time over the last few years. One of the reasons why the rules change, and the fact that there's more teams coming in Major League Soccer. But that will be interesting to see if the momentum that one team creates in a 1 game off will apply to the second round with the team that had the bye, which means the team who won the West and the East, will they be advantage having a few days off?
Yeah, we'll probably only have to worry about it for a year or so, because we all know damn well that MLS is going to expand its playoffs to 16. They'll probably cap it there because they're basically following the model of every other major North American league, right? So
16 teams when you have 32 is one thing. 16 teams when you have 28 is another.
Yeah. Oh, ask the NHL. They used to put 16 teams into the playoffs when they had 21, Kevin, but that was just before your time. So,
yeah, that's true. Way before my time.
Anyway, that was, the Toronto Maple Leafs used to make the playoffs with 56 points and stuff like that, and then they'd somehow beat. They used to play the Blues every year. I have vague memories of this. I was pretty young, but nonetheless, it was they called it the Snorris division after the Norris. Anyway, a little bit of a play on words there. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch the playoffs play out for sure.
And to finish the show today, Dwayne, breaking news. It literally broke before we started the show, and it's regarding Canadian soccer. It's regarding Canadian Premier League and League One Ontario, and especially Canadian soccer business. Here is the beginning of the press release that we received just before the show. Canadian soccer business announces Carmelina Moscato as manager of women's professional football development. Canadian soccer business is proud to announce and welcome former Canadian women's national team player and Olympic medalist Carmelina Moscato as manager of women professional football development. In her new role, she will also serve as commissioner of League One Ontario's women division and be responsible for creating strategies. In 1 second. She is a leader on and off the field, and her passion, expertise, and experience in the game at all levels will be instrumental in raising the bar and elevating the conversation around the future of the women's game in Canada. As a former player, coach, and technical director, Moscato brings a great depth of knowledge to help unlock what will be a bright future for women's professional soccer in Canada. Carmelina Moscato, president of women's football for Canadian Soccer Business, and also commissioner of League One Ontario Women's League.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly read a quote directly from Moscato. "We want to continue growing the current pathway to create opportunities for women to achieve their dream of a professional football career here in Canada." And that's your key phrase in this press release. Obviously, early days. Obviously, we need to learn more about what this will exactly mean. I do think that it is a very positive development when you look at Canadian Soccer Business, which, for those that don't know, is Canada's answer to SUM. So the marketing side of the Canadian Premier League. For them to invest in a women's director is a indicator to me that they continue, that they're not just giving us lines, so they're not just giving us lip service in terms of their efforts to grow the women's game to eventually lead to a Canadian Women's Premier League. And you know, when we had the commissioner on Two Solitudes, $2 a month or more, you can subscribe to that through our Patreon feed at Sports Podcasting Network. When we had the commissioner of the Canadian Premier League on, he said it was going a little bit faster than he thought, and this to me is just another positive development in that way. It suggests that it might be closer than we think to having Forge women play Valor women or something.
Yeah, and for me, that's the reason why, too, probably where he mentioned we're further than we thought, because this was probably in the works. So, congratulations to Carmelina Moscato. We hope you all the best. There's going to be some pressure, and there's a lot of need for women's soccer in Canada, and hopefully this is the first step to address the need, and the biggest need is professional soccer in Canada for women. A league of our own if we can, or a team of our own if we must, but something in the meantime, hopefully. On that note, make sure you follow Dwayne on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramie, and this show at Soccer Today SPN. Tomorrow, Dwayne, it's back. We're going to preview the weekend in the Premier League, in Europe, but especially Major League Soccer. A lot of games this weekend with playoff implications. Teams are playing for their seasons this weekend, and I'm going to be back Monday to talk about it. Yes. And on that note, Dwayne again at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramie. And you can find the podcast version of this show anywhere you find your podcasts at Soccer Today SPN on Twitter to make sure you get the notification when we go live, but also iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, and anywhere else you find your podcast. You should be able to find Soccer Today. And until tomorrow, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.